There is one type of empath that avoidants cannot walk away from. Not because they are desperate, not because they chase, but because something in the way they exist makes the avoidant feel something they have spent their entire life running from. And today you are going to find out exactly what that is. Most people think avoidants just do not want love. That is wrong. They want it more than almost anyone. They just learn to fear it. And when a specific kind of empath enters their world, that fear starts to crack. Not from pressure, not from pursuit, from something far more quiet, far more powerful. Stay with me until the end of this because what I am about to share will completely change how you understand yourself, avoidance, and why certain connections feel electric in a way nothing else ever has. Drop the word magnetic in the comments right now if you are ready to understand the one empath type that changes everything for the avoidant. Now let us get into this. You have probably heard the word empath thrown around a lot. Everyone seems to be calling themselves one these days. Sensitive, caring, feels too much. But what most people do not realize is that empaths are not all the same, not even close. There are different types, different wiring, different ways of processing and reflecting the emotional world around them. And most of them, when they encounter an avoidant, fall into the same trap. They give more, they feel more, they pursue more, and the avoidant retreats further. It becomes this exhausting loop that drains both people and leaves nothing but confusion and emotional wreckage behind. But there is one specific empath type that does not fall into that loop. And it is not because they are cold. It is not because they play games. It is because their entire psychological makeup is built in a way that speaks directly to the avoidant's deepest wound. And the avoidant does not even see it coming. So before we talk about who this empath is, we need to understand who the avoidant is, really is. Not the surface version that people talk about, the actual psychological architecture underneath. The avoidant learned something very early in life. They learned that needing people was dangerous. They learned that reaching out for comfort either got them rejected, dismissed, or made them feel like a burden. So they adapted. Brilliantly, actually. They shut the emotional door. They built an entire personality around independence, around self-sufficiency, around the idea that needing no one is strength. And for a while, it worked. It kept them safe. It kept them from feeling that early pain again. But here's the thing about shutting a door. You are not just keeping pain out. You are keeping everything out. Connection, warmth, real intimacy. And after years of that, even the avoidant starts to feel the emptiness. They will not admit it. Their nervous system will not let them. But it is there. It is always there. Now here is where most people get it wrong. When they meet an avoidant and feel that pull, that intense magnetic attraction, they think the answer is to pursue, to show how much they care, to prove that they are safe, to be as warm and available and loving as possible. And what happens? The avoidant runs. Every single time. Because to the avoidance nervous system, that level of availability is not comfort. It is a threat. It triggers every old fear they have about being swallowed, controlled, losing themselves, becoming dependent on something that could be taken away. So the more love you pour on an avoidant, the faster they move away from you. Not because they do not feel it, but because they feel it too much and it terrifies them. Now enter this specific empath type. The type I am talking about is what behavioral science calls the integrated empath. Some call them the secure empath. Some call them the evolved empath. But the name does not matter. What matters is how they function. And how they function is unlike any other relational style the avoidant has ever encountered. The integrated empath has done something rare, something most people never do. They have taken all of that deep emotional sensitivity, all of that ability to feel and read and understand people at a profound level, and they have combined it with an unshakable sense of self. They feel everything, but they are not ruled by what they feel. They care deeply, but they do not need you to validate that care. They see your pain, but they do not rush in to fix it. And that combination is the thing that the avoidance nervous system has never encountered before. It is the thing that stops the avoidant cold. Think about every relationship the avoidant has ever been in, every person who got close to them. One of two things usually happened. Either the person was emotionally available in a way that felt suffocating and the avoidant ran, or the person was emotionally unavailable and the avoidant felt nothing at all. Safe, yes, but empty. Neither of those options ever reach the avoidant at the depth where they actually live. The integrated empath is neither of those things. They are deeply present. They are emotionally warm. They can see straight through to the core of who the avoidant really is in a way that is almost unsettling. But they are not chasing. They are not performing. They are not waiting for the avoidant to complete them. They have their own life, their own center of gravity. And that center does not shift just because the avoidant pulls back. And that is the first thing that brings the avoidant to their knees. Presence without desperation. The avoidant has spent their entire life being a test for other people's stability. Everyone around them eventually breaks, eventually needs them to be different, eventually makes their love conditional on the avoidant showing up in a way that fits the other person's emotional comfort. And the avoidant fails that test, not because they are broken, but because their system is wired to retreat when pressure is applied. But the integrated empath does not apply that pressure. They do not collapse when the avoidant goes quiet. They do not spiral when the avoidant needs space. They do not interpret withdrawal as rejection and then retaliate with more pursuit. They simply remain, grounded, warm, present, and completely okay. And the avoidant notices, God, do they notice. Because for the first time in possibly their entire life, someone is seeing them clearly. All of their patterns, all of their withdrawal, all of the ways they push people away, and that person is not leaving, but they are also not begging. They are just there, solid, real, unshaken. That is new information for the avoidance nervous system. That is data it does not know how to process. And the response to that data is fascination, a pull, an almost involuntary leaning in. Now let us talk about the second thing the integrated empath does that absolutely unravels the avoidant. They communicate differently. Most people, when they feel disconnected from someone they care about, will either pursue harder or go cold. Both of those are emotional extremes that the avoidant knows how to handle. They have defenses built for both. They can outrun a pursuer. They can match your coldness and feel nothing. But the integrated empath does neither of those things. The integrated empath names what is happening in the space between them, calmly, without accusation, without emotional charge. They might say something like, I notice when things feel close between us, you tend to create some distance. I am not making that a problem. I just want you to know I see it, and I am not going anywhere. That kind of communication is disarming in a way the avoidant has never experienced. Because it does two things at once. It sees the avoidance pattern without shaming it, and it removes the threat that the avoidant has always assumed comes attached to being seen. Normally being seen means being judged, being needed, being responsible for someone else's emotional state. But the integrated empath separates all of that. They see you without needing anything from you in return for that seeing. And that is revolutionary to someone who has been hiding themselves their whole life. The avoidant starts to realize something uncomfortable and incredible at the same time. They can be known here, actually known, and it does not cost them their freedom. That realization is the thing that brings the avoidant to their knees. Now let us go deeper, because there is a third element that is perhaps the most powerful of all, and it is the most counterintuitive. The integrated empath honors the avoidant's need for space. Not reluctantly, not performatively, genuinely. Because the integrated empath understands something that most people in relationships never grasp. They understand that loving someone does not mean possessing them. It does not mean requiring constant contact to feel secure. It does not mean that the other person's withdrawal is a statement about your worth. They have done the internal work to separate their sense of self from the behavior of the person they are with. So when the avoidant pulls back, the integrated empath does not chase. They let the distance be. They fill their own world with meaning, with their own pursuits, their own connections, their own aliveness. And they wait, not from a place of playing a game, but from a place of genuine okayness with the rhythm of the relationship. And here's what happens. The avoidant goes into their space expecting the usual. expecting either to be pursued, which will trigger more retreat, or to be abandoned, which will confirm their core belief that closeness always ends in loss. But neither of those things happen. The integrated empath simply continues living, warmly, fully, without visible desperation. And the avoidant does something they almost never do. They come back, on their own, without being pulled, without being guilted, without being chased. They come back because the space was actually given to them freely, and something about that freedom made them want to return to the person who gave it. This is the paradox that avoidants live inside. The tighter someone holds them, the more they need to escape. The more freely they are released, the more they want to return. And only the integrated empath understands this paradox deeply enough to actually live it without it being a manipulation tactic. Because it is not a tactic for them, it is just who they are. And the avoidant feels that. They feel the difference between someone who is giving space as a strategy versus someone who is giving space because they are genuinely whole on their own. One feels like a trap, the other feels like a miracle. Let us talk about the fourth quality, the one that most people overlook entirely. The integrated empath holds the avoidant's potential without projecting it onto them. What does that mean? It means they can see who the avoidant could be, the open, loving, connected version of them that exists underneath all the armor, without making the avoidant feel like a project, without making the avoidant feel like they are constantly falling short of some expectation, without communicating even subtly that their love is contingent on the avoidant becoming something different. Most people who fall for avoidance make this mistake. They fall in love with the version of the avoidant they catch glimpses of, the raw, real, unguarded moments, the rare times when the walls come down. And then they spend the entire relationship trying to get that version to show up more consistently. They push for it. They grieve when it is gone. They communicate disappointment when the armor goes back up. And the avoidant, feeling the pressure of that expectation, retreats back behind the wall permanently. But the integrated empath loves the whole person, the armored version and the open version. They are not disappointed by the armor. They understand it. They do not try to rip it off. They just create conditions where taking it off feels safe. And that is a completely different experience for the avoidant. It is perhaps the first time they have felt accepted exactly as they are, even in their most defended state. And paradoxically, that acceptance is what makes them want to become more open, because they are not being required to, because the love is not conditional, because there is no punishment for retreating and no reward for performing openness. Just genuine presence and acceptance in both states. That kind of love is so foreign to the avoidant that it almost does not compute at first. Their nervous system keeps waiting for the catch, keeps waiting for the moment when the conditions appear, when the ultimatums start, when the disappointment becomes visible. But it does not come. And after enough time passes with it not coming, something in the avoidant begins to soften. Not dramatically, not all at once. Avoidants do not change in cinematic moments. They change in small, almost invisible increments. A slightly longer conversation than usual. A moment of vulnerability they did not plan to share. A text they sent first without being prompted. Tiny things. But to someone who knows what they are looking at, those tiny things are seismic. And the integrated empath knows exactly what they are looking at. Now let us address something important. Because some of you listening to this might be thinking, this sounds like a lot of work. This sounds like asking someone to suppress their own needs and pretend they are okay when they are not. And that is a valid question, a really important one. The integrated empath is not someone who suppresses their needs. They are not performing okayness while suffering in silence. They are genuinely okay because they have done the internal work to know themselves at a deep level, to regulate their own emotional system, to find security not in the behavior of their partner, but in their own sense of self and their own understanding of their worth. That is not suppression. That is not avoidance of their own emotions. It is the opposite. It is complete mastery of their emotional world. They feel deeply. They process thoroughly. They know exactly what they need, and they can communicate it without making it an emergency, without making it the other person's responsibility to solve immediately. And that is what makes them so fundamentally different from other empath types. The classic empath feels everything and often drowns in it. They give too much. They lose themselves in the other person's emotional world. They mistake someone else's pain for their own and then feel responsible for fixing it. With an avoidant, this creates the most predictable outcome imaginable. The empath pours everything into the relationship. The avoidant backs away from the intensity. The empath pours more to compensate for the distance. The avoidant backs away further. Until the empath is empty and the avoidant is gone, and both people are left wondering what went wrong. The integrated empath broke that pattern in themselves before they ever met the avoidant. They learned where they end and another person begins. They learned to feel compassion without absorbing someone else's experience as their own. They learned to give without depleting themselves. And because of all of that internal work, they have something to offer the avoidant that no one else can. Steadiness. Real, earned, genuine steadiness that does not crack under pressure. And steadiness is the one thing the avoidant has always needed and never known how to find. Let us talk about what this actually looks like in real life. Because theory is one thing, but you need to see this in action to really understand what I mean. Imagine an avoidant and an integrated empath have been seeing each other for 2 months. Things feel close, maybe too close for the avoidant, so they start pulling back. Texts come slower, plans get canceled, the energy shifts. There is distance where there was warmth. Most people in this situation would panic, would text more, would ask what is wrong, would either get angry or get anxious. And that reaction, however understandable, confirms every fear the avoidant has. That closeness means loss of control. That the other person cannot be trusted to hold themselves together. That getting closer will eventually mean being responsible for someone's emotional survival. But the integrated empath does something different. They notice the shift. They feel it. They are not numb. But they do not spiral. They might send one simple message, something warm, something that communicates, "I see you and there is no pressure here." And then they let it go. They go live their life. They see their friends. They work on their passion project. They do the things that fill them up. And they do not measure their worth by whether or not the avoidant responds quickly. A few days pass. The avoidant, used to either being chased or being abandoned, is receiving neither. Just warmth with no pressure. And something curious starts to happen. The avoidant starts thinking about the integrated empath. Not out of obligation, not out of guilt, out of genuine curiosity and pull. They find themselves wondering what this person is up to, missing the quality of their presence, remembering moments from their time together that felt different from anything else. And they reach out, their own, on their own terms, at their own pace. And when they do, the integrated empath responds with warmth, not with punishment for the distance, not with a passive-aggressive comment about how long it took, not with an emotional download of all the anxiety they managed during the silence. Just warmth. Just genuine pleasure at being in contact again. No drama attached. And the avoidant notices that too, that there is no emotional debt here, that pulling back did not result in punishment, that the safety they always thought was impossible in a close relationship might actually exist in this one. That is the moment the avoidant falls, not in a dramatic way, but at a cellular level, in the deep part of them where decisions are made before the conscious mind even knows it. Now I want to talk about something that often gets missed in these conversations, the effect of this dynamic on the integrated empath themselves. Because here is the truth. Being an integrated empath in relationship with an avoidant is not effortless. It requires tremendous self-awareness. It requires constant checking in with themselves, asking themselves honest questions. Am I genuinely okay with this pace? Or am I performing okay because I am afraid of losing them? Am I giving space because I believe in their process, or because I am afraid of asking for what I need? Am I genuinely growing here, or am I slowly shrinking? The integrated empath has to stay honest about those answers, because the difference between being an integrated empath and being a self-abandoning empath is that honesty. The moment they start suppressing genuine needs to keep the avoidant comfortable, They have crossed a line that will eventually break them and the relationship. The integrated empath knows they have needs too, real ones. They need communication. They need some consistency. They need to feel chosen. And they can communicate those needs, not as demands, not as ultimatums, but as honest expressions of who they are and what makes them feel alive in a relationship. And the avoidant, for the first time, encounters someone who can advocate for themselves without it feeling like an attack. Someone who says, "Here is what I need," from a place of self-knowledge rather than emotional desperation. And that too is disarming, because the avoidant cannot dismiss it as neediness, cannot frame it as someone trying to control them. It is just a person, clear-eyed and grounded, saying, "Here is who I am." And the avoidant has to decide, do they want to show up for that or not? And because the integrated empath's self-worth is not dependent on the avoidant's answer, they can hold that question with open hands. And that open-handed holding is perhaps the most powerful thing of all. Let us talk about why this matters beyond just romantic relationships. The integrated empath does not just change the avoidance experience of love, they change the avoidance experience of themselves. Because being truly seen by someone, being held with warmth and without judgment, being given space without being abandoned, being loved without being consumed, all of that begins to shift the avoidant's internal story. Their core belief that needing people is dangerous starts to crack, slowly. But crack it does, and through that crack something enters that may never have been there before. The possibility that intimacy is survivable, that vulnerability will not destroy them, that they can be known and still be free. That is an extraordinary gift, not just for the avoidant, but for the world. Because when an avoidant heals, even partially, they become capable of depth and loyalty and love that most people never get to experience from them. They become capable of a relationship that is truly extraordinary, because they have fought for every inch of their openness. Nothing is taken for granted. And the integrated empath who helped create the conditions for that healing does not do it by fixing the avoidant. They do it by simply being so fully themselves that the avoidant had no choice but to meet them there. Now let us come back to you, because this is not just information about other people. This is a mirror. If you are someone who has been drawn to avoidance repeatedly, there is a reason. That attraction is not random. It is not bad luck. It is pointing to something in your own internal wiring that is asking to be integrated. The parts of you that still seek love from the outside to feel whole. The parts that have not yet fully landed in your own sense of self. The parts that give more when you should hold still. You can become the integrated empath. It is not a personality type you are born as or not. It is a level of self-development that is available to anyone willing to do the inner work. The work of knowing yourself deeply. Of building genuine security from the inside out. Of learning to feel everything without being swept away by what you feel. Of caring about others without losing yourself in them. That work is the most important work you will ever do. Not just for your relationships, for your life, for the quality of presence you bring to every room you walk into, for the depth of connection you are capable of. And here is what I want you to sit with. The integrated empath does not bring the avoidant to their knees through strategy. They do not read a book of techniques and apply them. They bring the avoidant to their knees through the simple, radical act of being completely themselves. Whole, grounded, warm, present, unshakable. And in a world full of people performing versions of themselves to get love, someone who is just fully and completely real is the most magnetic force on earth. The avoidant knows armor. They know strategy. They know people trying to crack them open. They have systems built to resist all of that. But they have no defense against someone who is simply so fully alive and so genuinely themselves that being near them feels like breathing after years of holding your breath. That is the integrated empath. That is the one type that brings avoidance to their knees. Not through force, not through manipulation, through the extraordinary, quiet, devastating power of wholeness. Now the question is not whether you understand this. The question is what you are going to do with it. Because the most important relationship you will ever have is the one you build with yourself. And the moment you become truly integrated, truly whole, truly present in your own life, You will not have to think about how to make anyone love you. The right people will not be able to help themselves. Go build that. Go do that work. Go become so completely yourself that the world has no choice but to feel it. That is where everything you are looking for actually lives.